ranking all the eyeshadow palettes that I've tried in the year of 2022 so far. I usually do this halfway through the year every year now, and I cannot believe we are almost at the end of June. But I do usually film these videos in the month of June or towards the end of the month, and it's almost the end of the month of June. And I'm not planning to try any other palettes until July. So what I've been doing to not overwhelm myself with too many palettes to try, and also to not add too many palettes to my collection, because I kind of went palette crazy last year. What I decided to do is I've decided to start sticking to only purchasing one palette a month if it's something that I really, really want, or that way I can just try one new palette a month, try it when I can, and then utilize the rest of my collection still of eyeshadow palettes. So that's been kind of working for me. I picked up the Sigma Ambience palette, I think at the end of April, and the Winnie the Pooh palette at the end of April as well. And then I picked up the Star Wars palette from Colourpop in May, and then in June I picked up the Colourpop Lilac You A Lot palette, and that was the only palette I picked up in June, and the Star Wars palette was the only one I picked up in May. So I have been sticking to my rule, and it's pretty much to try other Colourpop palettes because I have another Colourpop palette I want to try in July. So let's get into this ranking. So I have 12 palettes to share with you guys, so let's start out with number 12. Number 12 is the Colourpop All Amethyst palette. Now, this is not even just the worst palette that I've tried this year, but it's also the worst Colourpop palette that I've tried in a long time. Because usually, I really like the quality and consistency of Colourpop, but I just can't really get down with this palette because... Hold on one second. Sorry, my dog was whining, but there's actually like a cleaning service here today to clean the house, and we have to keep Watson in my mom's room with her, and he's whining at the door. I thought that he was outside of the door and wanting to get let into her room. So anyway, this is number 12 because this palette has such a beautiful color story, and I kind of wanted it ever since it had come out. But I was kind of hearing like mixed reviews about this palette. Some people said it performed well for them. And then two of the YouTubers that I watch regularly, which is Angelica Nyquist and Makeup Just for Fun, I usually watch a lot of their videos for their Colourpop reviews. And they both said that they didn't really like it that much. And they were like, it's such a pretty color story. We really like the purples in here. But these mattes blend away into almost nothing. When you try to, you can't really layer mattes in this palette. You have to put on one matte and then kind of put on like a deeper matte. You can't do like this color and then like this color, because if you do like a lighter matte, you have to build this up so much, and then the darker mattes too. And then if I try to deepen it up with like a defining shade or like a darker shade, it will just completely almost take away that crease shade that I just put on. And then when you try to do the outer corners, it's not, these are two really pretty like deepening purple shades that I'll put them on the outer corners, and they'll like take a long time to deepen up the outer corners and almost like blend away again. So the way I was able to finally get the palette to blend is that I only used like two colors in the crease. I don't think I even did an outer corner shade. I just did one color here and defined it a little bit, and then I just sweeped one of these metallics all over the lid. But the metallics in here are also not that great either. They don't have like that shiny metallic formula that I'm used to with Colourpop shadows. Usually their metallics are really, really wet and buttery, and that's why I like their palettes a lot, but also their mattes aren't this hard to blend out. So this palette just didn't do it for me. Like this shade High Grade wasn't very thrilling on the eyes. The same thing with Sunbird. And then this shade Brilliant, I usually used in the inner corners when I used this palette. It looked so dry on the inner corners for some reason. It wasn't that like pretty shiny metallic again that I'm used to from Colourpop, because I usually love putting Colourpop shadows on my inner corners because they always pop so beautifully, but these just did not do it for me. So that's why this one was ranked the lowest. I do actually have this listed on my Poshmark because I don't want to keep this palette. I would have also listed the next palette I'm going to talk about, but I kind of like broke one of the shadows in there, so I can't really sell that one. But this one, I ended up getting another palette that I'm going to talk about from Colourpop later on in this video. And that one worked way better for me. And that one I was eyeing for such a long time. But I was like, let me get this one because I kind of feel like I would use this one a little bit more. And I already want to sell it and just use the other one as much as I can in the spring and summertime. So yeah, this was unfortunately a miss for me. And what sucks is that I should have bought this at Ulta, because after I would have tried it out, like I wouldn't have had to try it out right away, but when I did try it, then I could have returned it like easily. But I bought this off of Colourpop's website because I wanted to get a few other things when I bought it. And I was like, crap, now I can't return it. I have to sell it because I don't like it. So this one, unfortunately, was number 12. Usually I get along really well with Colourpop shadows, but that palette just didn't work for me. So number 11 is unfortunately another Colourpop palette, and number 11 is another 9-pan, and this is the Colourpop Secret Admirer palette. Again, this palette is really, honestly, all the other palettes I'm going to talk about, I really, really like. The All Amethyst palette was the only one I didn't really like. I actually like this palette. I think it's a cute little palette. But the reason why I ranked this lower over the other Colourpop palettes and other palettes that I tried this year. Can I get this out of here right now? This is like not happening. There we go. Is because that again, oh my god, this one like broke again. Shit. I'm probably going to have to repress this shade because this is a hot mess right now. Hold on one second. Okay, I had to get rid of some of the shimmer before I talked about this palette, but I'm going to have to repress this shade because, so I used to display this back in like February for like Valentine's Day because it has like obviously this was the Valentine's Day palette that Colourpop had released in February this year. So I was displaying it on my bookcase, but it kept on falling over, like as I would like walk into the room and stuff. Like sometimes like the bookcase would kind of shake a little bit, you know, due to like the vibrations of me walking into the room, and this would fall, so it caused this shade to be damaged. So I'm just going to show it like this really quick, and then I'm going to talk about it. So the mattes in here don't really blend as badly as the All Amethyst one does. Like these still all show up and they're easy to blend. And the shimmers in here are very pretty as well. The thing that I don't love about this palette is that I really thought that this was going to be like the pink palette for me from Colourpop, because I think I told you guys before that I was looking for like a good pink Colourpop palette, because I really don't think that brands really release true pink palettes. But the next palette I'm going to talk about definitely is more pink. But these shades don't really show up true to color, which kind of reminds me of the Tarte Tartelette palette. I had those problems with those mattes. Like they would show up darker or show up like a different color, like a pink instead of like a beige. It's a little weird. But these shades just end up all looking like pink. Like there's no like contrast to them. So they all end up looking like almost like too monochromatic. But this pink is really pretty. The Too Cute shimmer. The In the Mood Super Shock is very pretty as well. And like this is actually a good palette. The mattes are very buttery though. I mean, not buttery, powdery. And then the shade My Everything is like pretty much the only like deepening shade in here. But I also think you could deepen up with Hey Girl. It's very, very powdery, so it does cause quite a bit of fallout when you use it. But I always do my eye makeup first before I do my base. But I do notice that with this shade that it does cause some fallout underneath the eyes. But overall, I'm not really disappointed with this palette as I was with the All Amethyst. Like, I don't regret buying this or keeping this in my collection. It didn't really, like, meet my expectations. I was kind of underwhelmed by it. Like, I'm not like, oh my god, this is my favorite Colourpop palette. Like, it doesn't do what Going Coconuts does to me. But it's a good one. Like, I would still say that if you were curious about this palette, I would say go for it, because it's not like it's a bad palette. So, I just have to repress that shade. So, it's a cute little palette, but it just doesn't have enough pink in it for me, and it ends up being to look more neutral than it is, but I do enjoy using it when I do use it. This isn't really like my palette of choice to use when it comes to a pink palette, and that's what I thought it was going to be for me. So this one's more so personal preference, but I also don't think that the formula is as good in this palette as the palettes that I picked up last year from Colourpop. I think that was one of their best formulas throughout 2021. But then they changed up the formula again this year, and they made like some of the palettes a lot more powdery. When like last year they were like so consistent with the quality, and like every palette was like really, really good. So that's number 11. Okay, so number 10 is the Gourmand Girls C'est L'Amour palette. And the reason why this one is ranking lower than I expected it to is that, one, I was really, really excited for when this palette came out. This is a collaboration with Gourmand Girls and Doodles by the Bunny. Doodles by the Bunny is a Instagram artist where she draws like mock-up eyeshadow palettes, and she's been working with quite a few brands to make her palettes come to life, and Gourmand Girls worked with Doodles by the Bunny to make this palette a reality, and it is a beautiful palette. Don't get me wrong. It has a gorgeous color story. I was obsessed with this, and I could not wait to pick it up. The reason why this is ranking lower is because I don't find I can create enough depth with the mattes that are in here, and also some of the mattes that are in here are very, very light and are kind of hard to build up and blend out. Like Creme de la Creme and Rosé, they're very light and dry, and when I try to blend them out in my crease, I don't really get much color payoff from them. The first shade that I would say that does that is Soiree, but even that one is a little bit hard to build up. So these three shades that I would use to build up contrast if I decided to do like some type of more toned down neutral look with it, with like the gold on the lid or the brown or something like that, those mattes just don't give me enough depth, and they're kind of powdery. But like the black and the pink in here are very pretty. I also think that this soft pink is a really pretty pink. But also this one takes some building to build up in the crease. Like, it doesn't show up as well. It shows up better than these two, but it still takes some building. The shimmers in here, though, are stunning. Every single shimmer in here is beautiful. I absolutely love the red shimmer in here, Passion. It's such a beautiful red. And then the shade Ooey is my favorite in here, because you guys know I'm a sucker for gold, but it's like a gold duochrome shimmer, and it's so beautiful. And then this pink shade is also stunning. And then you guys know that Gourmand Girls does some of the best blacks I've ever tried. And I have this black from them, and I have the black in the Exquisite palette, because I also own that one from Gourmand Girls. And this black is amazing. It's so silky smooth, and it blends out beautifully, and it deepens up any look. So honestly, if you have a black, it's not that much of a gripe for me, because you can deepen up anything with a black. And also the matte red in here is phenomenal. This is probably the best matte in this palette, the red and the black. They're just so pigmented and beautiful. So I'm not going to swatch anything. I'm probably only going to swatch like my more higher up palettes. But this palette, unfortunately, didn't hit as much or really like impress me as much as how excited I was for it when it was launching. I was like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. But having it in person, I wasn't as impressed. But I do think that the shimmers in here are stunning. It's just the mattes that I had an issue with. But it's a really cute palette. I love the packaging. So that is number 10. I don't know where to put my palettes now. I'm just going to start putting them on the floor. Okay, number 9, because I talked about 3 palettes so far. So number 9 is a new, so this is a new brand to me. So these next 2 palettes, this one and the next one, are both new brands to me that I tried this year. So the first one and number 9 is the Curse Cosmetics Spellbook palette. Now, I got this palette because I wanted to try a few things from Curse Cosmetics. They weren't actually like the top brand on my list to try, but I always heard that their stuff was really, really good, and then they actually made me one of their mavens. So I actually have an affiliate code with them, which is pretty cool because they're the only brand and the first and only brand that I have an affiliate code with, so that was really cool. So I wanted to pick up an eyeshadow palette and a couple of the liquid lipsticks so I could share my thoughts with you guys and talk about the brand and tell you guys about my affiliate code. So I picked up this eyeshadow palette from them. They only have like 3 palettes to offer. I'm going to hold it on this side. It's a little bit easier for me. And the thing is that, like, I think the color story is so cool. I think that the mattes are really pretty in here. It's a very easy to work with formula. And the shimmers are very pretty as well. Like, I have no issues with the pigmentation of this palette. They're actually really, really nice. The mattes build up very easily. It's a very, like, honestly beginner-friendly formula. I think I've used the majority of the mattes in here. I think the only one I haven't used possibly is the blue, but I don't know if I used it with the orange to do like an orange blue look. And this is the only palette that I actually haven't used every single shade in, but the only shades that I haven't used is 2 of the pressed glitters. I've used the rest of the shimmers. So I could base my opinion on the glitters just by trying one of them because they're all pretty much the same formula. So the shimmers are very pretty, soft shimmers. They're not like anything blinding. They just work on the lid. They're very pretty. I wouldn't say they're anything too like mind-blowing. They're just a really pretty shimmer formula. I think my favorite shade is Love Spell because it's like a really pretty like peachy champagne, and you guys know I love those kind of shades. This green was also really pretty. And then I really like the orange matte in here, which is Conjure. I usually use that in almost every look, but there's some good neutrals up here and neutral base shades that you can use with the other shimmers. But also the thing about this palette, similar to the Gourmand Girls palette, is that the only shade that you have in here to build up some depth and dimension on the outer corners is the black. I mean, you could probably get away with this brown, but even this shade is sometimes a little bit too light for me to build up depth. So then I would have to go in with the black. I'm not going to use the blue to deepen up on a daily basis, but this is a pretty deep blue that you could do that with. But that would be my only issue. And also, when I had tried a couple of the shimmers, the last time I used this palette, I used the silver. It didn't really last that well on my eyes, and it kind of had transferred. Not that I don't have that problem with my shimmers because I use a glitter glue, so it is more prone to transferring. I kind of rank my palettes due to the color story, the formula, and whether or not it transfers too much on me. That's pretty much what it comes down to. But I like it. I'm glad that I tried it. This is not a bad palette at all. And then the glitters in here, I actually really liked the glitter that I tried, so I would like to try the other 2. I'm probably going to wear this palette in July to Thor. I'm not sure yet because I already bought my tickets to Thor with my friends. I wore this palette to Doctor Strange as well, and that's why I used one of the glitters. So I used this gold bronzy color called Spellbook on my lid. I don't think I had used any of the shimmers underneath as a base. I think I just went in straight in with this, and it was really pretty, very pigmented, and very easy to work with, and it wasn't like falling all over the place. It was really, really pretty. So I like this palette. It's not anything that I'm like, oh my god, you need it in your life, but I just got the glitter all over my finger. But I also really like the matte brow bone highlight in here. That is definitely a plus for me when a palette has that and a good deepening shade, but you guys know I love a good chocolatey brown in like every single palette, but obviously not every single palette needs that because of course I have chocolatey brown shades to build up any look. So this is a pretty palette. I like it. So that one is number 9, but there's just other palettes that I liked more. So number 8, I had to remember really quick what number we were on. So number 8 is another new brand to me, like I said, and number 8 is the Adept Cosmetics Amunet new palette. Now, Adept Cosmetics was a brand that was on my list for quite a while to try. They are just a pricey brand. They're not exactly cheap. Their palettes can run anywhere from like $50 to $60. I think this one was like a $55 palette. So if I can't get like a good sale on a palette, I usually typically don't buy it unless they offer some type of payment program like Afterpay, and Adept Cosmetics does offer Afterpay, so I just used that to buy this palette. And this was actually the first new brand that I had ordered in 2022 because I think I ordered this at the end of December because I ordered it on the restock. So I ordered it in December, but it didn't come to me till January, so I didn't try it until this year. So the thing about this palette is that the shimmers in here, oh my god, so beautiful. Stunning shimmers in here. But the mattes are pigmented and beautiful as well. But when it comes to the other new brands that I had tried this year, and we'll talk about those later, these mattes just weren't blending as well to me as the other brands that I'm going to be talking about. So the mattes in here, the issue that I have is that when I try to blend more colors together, it kind of becomes harder to blend them because they start getting like either patchy or the colors don't blend together because they're too different of a color. I'm not really sure what the issue is because I tried to do a look with like this pink, this purple, and this like brown shade. So it sucks because I really, really wanted to like love this palette. I like it, but I don't love this formula because the mattes, again, I had such issues blending together. They just don't play, they don't like to play nice with each other. Like, so I did this shade in the crease, then I like darkened up the crease more with this Horus shade. And then I used Patat on the outer corners for a look. I think it might have been one of the first looks that I did with this palette, or it might have been my first impressions. Get ready with me, but they weren't really blending that great together, and I just thought it didn't look that great. And then I think that I put all over the lid, and the shimmers in here saved the looks because they're so beautiful. The shimmers are so stunning, but the problem with the shimmers is that they're gorgeous, but since they have such a wet formula, they are very prone to transferring like onto your crease. So, but also I use a glitter glue. I haven't used this palette in a little while, but I have used it enough to know what I prefer when it comes to like what formulas I like. And this one wasn't my favorite, but the shimmers are stunning. So I do want to try and whip out this palette again soon and use it and see what I think. But when I also used the mattes in here, I made sure my eyeshadow brushes were clean. I think the second time that I had used the palette. I don't know. I think I just used my spot cleaner when I did my first impressions with this. But the second time that I used the palette, I was like, I'm just going to deep clean my brushes with like my brush cleanser. And then I used this palette again. I was like, maybe it's just because my brushes were stiff because the spot the spot cleaner can make them stiff sometimes. And I still had the same issues even after my brushes were clean. So just be mindful of that. But if you were curious about Adept, they have a stellar formula. It just didn't really work for me. So but this one is ranking higher because of the special shimmers in here. They're just super duper pretty. Let's just swatch a couple. Why not? So let's swatch Ree and Bassett. They're so pretty. Oh God, they're so gorgeous. They're so pretty because they're kind of like multi-dimensional shimmers. And it's not really going to show as well on camera, but that one is Ree and that one is Bastet. And they're really pretty, like smooth, shimmery formulas. And they're very pretty, and the mattes are pigmented. It's just, I had issues blending them together. And the only shade that really helped build up depth and dimension in here after, like, this one didn't really blend out as well I was hoping was Emotep, because this is the only dark brown in here and I don't want to use that every single time. I think what they should have done with this palette is taken out like this yellow and probably put in like a deeper matte shade. I don't know, maybe like some kind of like mustardy brown, because I don't think this shade really adds too much to this palette, but it's still really pretty. I'm really glad that I tried the brand. I don't regret it at all, but it just was a formula that didn't really work with me that well, but I still think it's very pretty. So that one is number 8. All right, so number 7, we're going to get into a few Colourpop palettes. Actually, the next 4 palettes are all Colourpop, but then the top 3 are all different brands. So a Colourpop palette did not beat out the top 3 palettes. You're welcome. So number 7 is the most recent palette that I've tried, and also the most recent Colourpop palette that I've tried, and it's another 9 pan, and this is the Colourpop Lilac You A Lot palette. Now, these next 3 palettes could have probably fell anywhere. It just depends on like how I was feeling. I feel like some people say that in some of their videos. They're like, it just depends on the day where I want it to fall or what I was feeling that day. Because I feel like this one and then 6 and 5, they could have been ranked a little bit differently. But this is my newest palette, but I just finished testing out this palette yesterday. And the reason why I ranked this one just a little bit lower than the other 3 is because it is much more monochromatic. You don't really get as many options with this palette. I do find that some of the mattes are a little bit dry, but they do build up to be pretty pigmented. And when I finish my makeup with this palette, it looks really, really pretty. It looks better than it did when I first started doing my makeup, because after you have all your makeup done, it really like brings out the colors of the eyeshadows. Sometimes that happens with certain eyeshadows. I feel like it has to warm up to your skin a little bit. But I don't find that there's anything that I'm lacking in this palette, but I just end up using like these 3 shades almost every time I use this palette, but that's why I got it, because I wanted a lavender purple palette. I don't know why I just didn't pick up this one over the All Amethyst palette. I've been wanting this palette for so long. There are definitely a lot of Colourpop palettes that have been on my list that I've looked at over and over and over again and decide whether or not I was going to buy it. Like the Limoncello palette and Plush Like Me palette, I didn't buy those. They came free with an order. So I was able to try those because I didn't have to spend money on them. But some of the other palette, and they ended up both being hidden gems to me and ended up being like some of my favorite palettes that I tried from Colourpop. But what was I going to say? I'm trying to remember whether or not I ranked one of the palettes that I'm talking about in my Colourpop palettes video, but I don't think I had tried it until 2022, and I had received it in 2021, but I had a lot more palettes to try in 2021 because I bought so many palettes last year. But anyway, this palette's really, really pretty. The shimmers are very pretty in here, and I really like the matte shades, but again, I always end up using these 3 shades, but I don't really mind that because I do like the selection of mattes in here a little bit more than the All Amethyst palette. Let me compare them really quick just so you guys can see the difference. Because the All Amethyst palette definitely has deeper mattes in here. So I haven't actually held them up side by side with each other. So they definitely do have similar vibes, and I would definitely say you don't need both. The reason why I picked up this one is because this one I did not like. So, and I really just thought that these colors were lacking in my collection, and I really wanted a lavender color story. So you guys can see that this one is a lot more like cool toned, and this one has like just really pretty like purple tone, lavender toned mattes. Like the pink, even the pink, like it's like an icy pink, which is really pretty. And this pink is like more of like a blushy toned pink. And then with the two purples, these two are more deeper and cooler toned. These ones are like more true purple shades. So I just wanted to show you guys those two really quick. But like I said, it basically ends up becoming very like, you know, repetitive with the looks. But I don't mind that because I did buy this to go with certain shirts, and also I had certain looks in mind that I was going to do with this palette. And it doesn't really bother me because I'll just use the same three mattes and then put a different shimmer on the lid, and then that's how I change up the look. So, but they are really pretty. This shade Cloud, that was the last shade that I tried, and I used it yesterday, and it's such a beautiful like lavender glittery shimmer shade. It's more lavender on the eyes than it looks in the pan, and it's so pretty. Like it kind of transforms to like an even better color on the lid. And you know how I was saying before, like, oh, this Colourpop palette makes like the color almost completely different when you use it. It's different with a shimmer because it hits like different. I'm like, oh, that's even prettier. So this one is Cloud, and this one is Trainwreck. Trainwreck is kind of like a more duochrome purple. Super duper pretty. And then I'll just swatch one of the mattes. I'm not swatching everything in this video. And of course I swatched it over the Adept palette, but that's okay. But this is actually a really pretty purple. I don't have any issues building it up or anything. These purples actually perform really well, and I think it's really good. I don't think it's as good as the Or Kid You Not palette. That's still one of my top favorite palettes from Colourpop. And definitely my favorite purple palette in my collection. I used that one a ton. But this is really pretty for the springtime, so I'm glad that I picked it up. So that one is number 7, and the reason why, again, it's ranking a little bit lower is because the other palettes that I'm ranking higher are just a little bit more versatile than this one. Okay, so number 6. We're getting into the top, like, I love all these palettes. They're all so good. So number 6 is the Colourpop Winnie the Pooh Sweet as Can Be eyeshadow palette. This was the first Colourpop palette that I tried that came out this year. It wasn't the first Colourpop palette I tried that was new to me. So this is the Colourpop Sweet as Can Be Winnie the Pooh eyeshadow palette. And I knew I could not say no to this palette. I knew I had to pick it up. I fully intended on picking this up. I hadn't picked up any new Colourpop palettes, I think, until this palette launched. Because I was trying to be on a no-buy for Colourpop eyeshadow palettes for a while, because I picked up way too many last year. So the only one I had that was new was the Plush Like Me palette. Oh, I picked up the Secret Admirer and the All Amethyst palette. I'm lying. But those palettes weren't very good. So this palette I was really excited for, and this was the first palette that actually impressed me from Colourpop that came out this year. Because the Secret Admirer and the All Amethyst were not good palettes. So anyway, I think that this is a really, really pretty spring palette. I also like that you have these deepening options in here. Honestly, the deepening shades, like the deepening mattes, always are like such a game changer for a lot of palettes, especially if you like building up depth and dimension. I don't need to do that all the time, but usually, like, I don't like just a crease shade and a lid shade. I like to build up a little bit of something in like the defining area and the outer corners. So I really like these because this brown pretty much deepens up anything in this palette. And then this color, you can go with this one too if you want to make it a little bit more interesting and different. This is such a beautiful like burgundy red. It's so pretty. And then the shimmers in here are really good. The most used matte for me was this yellow shade. It's kind of like a marigold and it's such a beautiful yellow. And then the shimmers are so pretty in here. And these are like the wet metallic formula that I really love from Colourpop. And all the shimmers in here have that type of formula. And they're so beautiful and blinding on the lid. And then the mattes in here, there's just a really, really cute little palette. And I really, really liked it. So I'm just going to swatch a couple for you guys. Let's just swatch everything. But look how smooth and metallic those are. They're just so pretty. I definitely feel the difference in the quality with this one over the Lilac You A Lot palette. They're definitely like smoother and wetter and creamier feeling than but those are the older formula of the Lilac You A Lot. So it doesn't bother me as much because Colourpop has just improved their formula over the years. So this one is Honey Tree. This one is Make Believe. And this one is, Oh Bother, which Oh Bother is such a beautiful like peachy shimmer. And Make Believe I love because it's such a stunning gold. You guys know I love my gold. And then the green is just really pretty. So I'm just going to swatch the In My Tumbly shade because it's such a pretty matte. And they're so soft and smooth in this palette, the mattes. Look how pretty that is. Just a really good formula. And like I've said before, and I've said this like a million times, I think they really just step up the formula in the Disney palettes and the Disney collabs. But I don't know why these side collections like this and the Tinkerbell collection and the Bambi collection, why they put a lot more effort into like the products that they release in them. Because like the more popular launches like Powerpuff Girls and Hocus Pocus and Star Wars, for some reason they didn't release like enough cheek products. And in the Star Wars collection they haven't done any cheek products. So that's why this one is number 6. Now we're getting into the top 5. So speaking of Star Wars, number 5 is the Colourpop Star Wars palette. This is definitely my favorite Colourpop palette that I tried this year. I kind of switched this at the last minute, but I think that this one was still ranked the highest. This is my favorite palette that I've tried that Colourpop came out with this year, because my top Colourpop palette this year didn't come out this year. It came out last year. So this is the Star Wars palette, and I was so excited when they came out with this palette. I mean, a lot of people were. And this is the Star Wars palette. So it's basically based on like A New Hope, and it has like a blue and red color story, like the red and blue lightsabers. I got into this more when I hauled everything in my last video, when I finally hauled to this palette. But this is a really good palette. I actually used it over the weekend on Sunday, and I also used it on Monday because I kind of wanted to just use it again, because I hadn't really used it as much after I had tested out the palette fully. I didn't reach for it again until this past weekend. And it's a good little palette. I mean, the shimmers are really beautiful. Like this row of shimmers, top notch. Like this is the metallic formula that I love from Colourpop. And then these deepening mattes, I really love that we have these deepening mattes here. We have 4 different options, so that can take your look in a lot of different directions. I love this deepening blue, the red. This black is so good, and so many people were so happy that it was a matte black, and it's such a good black. I probably could have done without, like I've said before, I probably could have done without all of these neutral shades in here, but obviously I end up reaching for them a lot. As you guys can see, Starfighter has a bit of kick up in there because I use that one almost every time I use this palette. The thing is that the Super Shocks in here didn't really impress me as much as I thought that they would, because I had never tried the tie-dye formula of the Super Shocks before. I never had picked up the single shadows. So I was really excited to try them in this palette. And they're pretty, but they're not like, oh my god, amazing. I thought they would be like really multi-dimensional and like would shift like 3 different colors, but it ends up just being like kind of like a red black or a shimmery like blue black, but they're still really pretty. And then this shade, Hyperdrive, is a really beautiful like duochrome color. It's so pretty. So yeah, I really like this palette. So I'm just going to swatch a couple of shades. I don't want to be here forever. But these are the metallics I'm talking about from Colourpop. They do great golds and they do really wonderful silvers. So that one is New Hope and this one is Kessel Rum. They're so pretty and metallic. They remind me of the shades in the It's a Princess Thing palette. And then let's just swatch one shimmer. We don't have to be here all day. I mean, one matte. Look how pretty that blue is. So good. So that one is, it looks better in person, but that one is Rebellion. It's a really good blue shade. So I do want to use this palette a bit more when I can. I probably should have just put that blue on my lower lash line today, but I don't really know what I'm doing today because my boyfriend hasn't texted me still. I don't know if we're hanging out or not. It doesn't really matter to me. I honestly would rather just stay home all day today because I have not had a day to stay home all day since Easter back in April. So anyway, really liked this palette. It's very pretty. And if you guys were interested in getting it, I hope they restock it. So they haven't restocked either one of the Disney collections since they came out. Like the Winnie the Pooh palette, as soon as that sold out, they didn't restock it. The same thing with this. So it's been like a month and a half since this launched, because this launched on May the 4th. So I don't know what they're doing with that. So, but yeah, it was a great palette. Okay, you guys, so let's get into the top 4 palettes. So number 4 is my favorite Colourpop palette that I tried in 2022. But this palette did come out in 2021. That's probably why it's my highest ranked one, because like I said, I really, really loved Colourpop's formula that's last year. And they just played on my nostalgia last year, and that's why I picked up so many palettes from them. So number 4 is the Colourpop Plush Like Me palette. This palette was definitely the most surprising palette that I've ever tried from Colourpop. So I tried the worst palette that I've tried from Colourpop, and I tried the one that shocked me and impressed me the most this year. And this palette, I was not interested in at all when it launched. I was like, it's friggin' boring. Like, I didn't think I was gonna like it. Because honestly, looking at this online, it really looks like nothing. Like, it really does not look this pretty. I don't know if you guys think it looks pretty, because this might be not your cup of tea, but I loved this formula in here. And I ended up reaching for it a lot because it's a really good neutral palette. And it's kind of like a different twist on neutrals for Colourpop, because it's more of like a grungy themed palette. And I probably love this because of the 90s girl in me, because this is like a 90s grunge themed palette. So it's just so pretty. I love the versatility of the mattes in here. They're just so good. And the shimmers are so beautiful. They're so metallic and stunning. And the mattes in here all blend out so well. And they almost have like a velvety smooth texture. And this is the formula that I love from Colourpop. And they really need to do in like every single palette. But this and the Limoncello blew me away last year on how good the quality was. So I really didn't think I was going to love it. But I love that there's 3 different deepening options in here. You can go warm tone, you can go red toned, or you can go really deep with the brown. And then you have these really pretty like mid-tone mattes. And then of course I love that you have a matte brow bone highlight, and the shimmers in here are so stunning. So I really enjoyed this palette. So I'm just going to swatch a couple of them for you. Just super pretty. And again, the mattes just feel like buttery smooth. So I'm just going to swatch them. Hopefully you guys will see that. Yeah, I think those are actually decent swatches. So we have TLC, Video Night, and Velvet one. Just all so pretty. So yeah, loved this palette. I was really, really impressed with the quality of it. I'm just going to wipe these swatches off and then we'll talk about the top 3. So yeah, this palette really did impress me. I can't believe how much I really loved that palette. So, And I'm glad I got to try it for free because it came free with an order. So I'm just really surprised because I didn't think I was going to love that palette because I was like, oh, it wasn't even on my radar. Okay, top 3. Let's get into the top 3. So this one is a new brand to me this year. I was kind of hesitant to try this brand, but I thought they handled the drama that happened with them pretty well. So number 3 is the Nomad Whistler Snow Lodge palette. The quality of this, oh my god. Now I know why everybody talks about Nomad's formula. It is so freaking good, you guys. My mom's right outside my room. So yeah, really, really loved the quality of this. The mattes just blend beautifully. They're so pigmented, but they're so easy to work with. Like, they're pigmented and just build up so easily that you don't have to worry about like blending too much because they just go on your eyes. And they're so buttery smooth and soft. And then the shimmers in here are just stunning on the lid. They have like this wet formula, but not too wet. They're just so highly metallic, but they're so pretty on the lids, and they really don't transfer all that much. And I just love this palette. I love that you can do the mints. I love how you can do the blue look. I love how you can do like the reds with the blue or the reds with the green. There's so many different things that you can do with this palette. The only thing is that I do wish that there was like a lighter brown matte in here, but honestly, that kind of gets me to use my singles. Like if I want to do something more neutral, I'll just take like a Colourpop matte single and then you like use this or this. But this shade is so deepening and it's just such a beautiful matte brown. But this one also deepens up really well, but I like using this as a defining shade. But I really love the mint colors in here. These are beautiful. I think my favorite shade in here is Whistler. It's such a gorgeous mint shimmery color. I also love Ski Bum too. It's such a beautiful duochrome. So Debbie pretty much convinced me to buy this palette. I bought it right after she had come out with her review of it. And this was, I think, the first palette that she had received in PR from Nomad. And also, I was the first one to use her discount code because she also got a discount code when she received this palette. They said, we're going to give you an affiliate code. And I was the first one to use it to get this palette. So that was really, really special to me. And after I had watched her review on it, I was like, you convinced me, because I watched a couple of other videos like Butte Bean and Angelica Nyquist, and they were both like, I love this palette. So I just thought it would be a really beautiful like winter palette, and I bought it back in February, and I used it so much because I just couldn't get over how good the quality was in this palette. So we're just going to do a couple of swatches because I need to get out of here soon because I didn't realize I was going anywhere. So I'm just going to swatch a couple, but look at that. Look at that pigmentation, you guys. Like, so, so good. So that one is Après Ski, this one is Nomad, and this one is Whistler. Like, I'm telling you guys, if you guys were curious with Nomad, some people say that their older palettes aren't as great as the new ones, but most people say that they keep on just getting better and better and better with each palette, and this formula is amazing. I loved every shade in this palette. I've done so many different combos. Oh my god, this shade right here, Ski In, is such a gorgeous like gold, like white gold, and this shade, Powder Specialist, is such a gorgeous like duochrome pinky shade, and then the berry toned shimmer, and then the deep blue one. Oh my god, they're all just so beautiful. I think for my first impressions of this palette, I think I did a blue look, and I do have another look when I did a blue and red look together. Like, I used the berry tones and the blues, and it was so pretty. So the difference between this palette and the Adept palette is that all these mattes blend so easily and beautifully together. And the shimmer formula is just wet enough to be super shimmery and shiny, but not transfer. So that's why I prefer this formula a lot more over the Adept. So yeah, that one made it to number 3. All right, so let's get into my top 2, and then I have to leave. So number 2, I think you guys are going to guess what my top 2 are going to be. You might not be able to guess number 1, but number 2 is the Odin's Eye and Angelica Nyquist Hella palettes. And the only reason why this one isn't number 1 is because number 1 I have used the most out of all the palettes that I'm going to be talking about, besides the Plush Like Me palette, because those are like the 2 neutral palettes that I have used the most this year. So hint, hint, number 1 is a neutral palette. So number 2 is the Hella palette by Angelica Nyquist and Odin's Eye. You guys know I pretty much fell in love with Odin's Eye last year. They were a new brand to me last year, and I had tried 4 of their palettes, and I was blown away by the Legendary Diversa collection, that it made it all the way to my number 2 favorite palettes of last year. And this one is no exception. This palette is wonderful. Every single shade in here is just amazing. Like, this performs amazingly. Like, no negatives about it. The duochromes are gorgeous. I love this color, River. It's like a gorgeous, like, duochrome. This color, double-sided, is such a beautiful, like, peachy gold multi-chrome. This shade, Hellfire, is a really pretty peachy duochrome. And then there's just so many good shades in here. The greens in here are phenomenal. I absolutely love the shade Venom. I think this one's my favorite shimmer because it's such a gorgeous one. But this one, River, might be my second favorite. And the mattes, their matte formula is so phenomenal. Like, it's just so pigmented, but it blends out beautifully. And again, that's why I prefer Nomad and Odin's Eye over Adept, because the mattes just blend so much better. The only thing I would say about this palette is that I wish that there was kind of a pink shimmer in here as opposed to this peachy one, because I would kind of like a pink shimmer to go with these pinks more. But every time I use this with those, it looks so pretty that I'm like, I don't really need it. And I kind of wish there was kind of like another like different matte in here, like maybe a different green, like if this shade was like kind of like a regular moss green, not like a swampy green. But honestly, every time I use this palette, the combos are just so beautiful. So I kind of like, it's not typically what I would use. It just takes me a little bit longer to figure out which mattes I want to use. Like the Red Dragon palette and the Giant Wolves palette from Annette and Judy, I think are a little bit more cohesive. I mean, this is still a pretty cohesive palette. I'm just like, oh, I wish that this shade was in here. And also Rebirth isn't quite, it's kind of dark for me to use underneath my brows, but it's really pretty. So I'm just going to swatch a few of the shimmers for you guys just to show you guys how beautiful they are. So this one is Fluorescence, this one is Venom, and this one is Hellfire. So they're just all, oh my god, they're so beautiful. And I'll just swatch one. I really can't swatch any more shades because my hands are getting full of glitter. Like, I really just need to get out of here soon. I'm just going to use the napkin that I have because I have my cellar water. You know, I forgot that I have the e.l.f. makeup wipes that I could have used rather than getting glitter like literally everywhere. But yeah, the mattes in here are stunning as well. So I'll just swatch like 2 of them. But they're amazing. Like the matte formula from Odin's Eye is just phenomenal. And they're very similar to the Nomad. The Nomad are even softer. So that one is Soot and that one is Goddess. Soot is like the go-to deepening shade in this palette. It deepens up every look so beautifully. So I love this palette. And you guys knew it was gonna be one of my favorites. I mean, duh. I feel like I've been talking for a century. So let's just get into number 1. So number 1 is the eyeshadow palette that I'm wearing on my eyes today. And I cannot stop using this palette anytime I need a neutral look. This is my go-to palette. Let me just wipe my fingers one more time before we get into it, because I just stained my fingers again with those Odin's Eye shades. So number 1, drum roll please. Number 1 is the Sigma Ambience eyeshadow palettes. This one blew it away for me. This one blew all the other palettes out of the water. I didn't really think I was going to love this palette as much as I did. But as soon as I got it in person and saw the colors and the color story and the shimmers in this palette, I'm like, I feel like I'm going to love this palette. And after the first time I tried this palette, I'm like, I love it. This is like the neutral palette of my dreams. So this is actually a new brand to me. I had never tried Sigma before. I had never even tried their brushes before. And I know so many people rave about their brushes. But I love this palette so much, you guys. I love the mattes in here. I love the shimmers in here. They just all blend so easily. And I know what I'm going to get from this palette every single time I use it. But that's the same thing with like the Hella palette and the Nomad palette. I never have any blending issues. The same thing with the Plush Like Me palette. This palette is just wonderful. I love it so much. The mattes just blend amazingly and they're so pigmented and so easy to work with. And the shimmers are stunning. They're so beautiful. They have like this such easy formula to put on the lid. And they really don't transfer. That's why I love this palette so much. But this shade Marigold is such a beautiful like sparkly color. This shade Midas is such a gorgeous like bronzy gold. Sunflower, of course. I love yellow golds. Candlelight, stunning. They're just all amazing. Firefly is such a unique shade. It has like pink glitters in it. And then the mattes are just amazing. So I love this palette so much, you guys. I cannot stop using it when I want to do a neutral look. This is the palette I want to reach for almost every single time I do like an everyday look now. I love it so much. So today I'm wearing Daylily in the crease, and I darkened up the crease more with Summer Solstice, and then I used Enrich on the outer corners, and then for the lid shade I used the shade Burnish, and then for the brow bone I used Daze, and then for the inner corners I used Midas, because I don't really use that one as much on the inner corners, but it's so pretty, because I always end up using Sunflower or Luster on the inner corners, but oh my god, just gorgeous. Every single shade is amazing in here. I don't know what else to say. They're all phenomenal. Like, the shimmers have like this beautiful wet formula to them. And they're so beautiful. Alright, swatches. Hopefully you guys can see. Oh, those are so pretty. So that one is Midas, this one is Marigold, and then this one is Firefly. Look how pretty. And that's how they look on your lids too. That's why I love this palette. And the mattes, so good. So good. So beautiful and buttery. I love it. I love this palette, you guys. I'm getting eyeshadow like everywhere. Like literally everywhere. So those are some of the mattes for you guys. So this one is Daylily, this one is Summer Solstice, and this one I believe is Enrich or Sunspot or one of those deepening shades. But it's amazing. I love this palette so much. And oh my god, now I realize why people love Sigma brushes. This brush is phenomenal. I used it today and it's just such an amazing brush. The only thing about this palette is that this shade Daze is a little bit dark for me underneath my brows. But it worked for me really well today. Maybe because today's like a gloomy day outside. But sometimes it's a little bit dark for me. But I freaking love this palette. And that's why this one had to be #1. I mean, there wasn't really any competition after I tried this. I love it so much. So yeah, that is all my top picks and all the palettes that I tried in 2022 so far. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts. Whether or not you have tried any of these palettes. And if you guys want any if you guys are wanting to try any of these palettes, please let me know, because I do have first impression videos for all of these palettes, because I always film a first impressions for all of my eyeshadow palettes. Look at my hands. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CPW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. Was anything a surprise to you? Were you able to guess my top picks? Please let me know. So yeah, that's it. I love you guys so much. Bye.